So I'm going to go ahead and create a new child of the base door. And we'll call this one so it's door double. Do it swing. Do it swing double. There you go. That way it just keeps them next to each other in the content browser. So what we do need to do is first of all sort out the meshes that we're going to be using. Which reminds me, I don't think I've actually imported them yet. Let me have a quick check. No, single no. Right, okay, so we'll quickly open up Blender. Okay, yeah, so when it comes to the double door, all we really need is a door frame that's can fit 2 doors in it. So that's what I've got here, so it's nothing special. Just a door frame with some collision. So I'm going to go ahead and get that imported in to Unreal. Double check that's correct. Yep. So send to Unreal. So hopefully we should now have a door frame. Yeah, there we go. I'm just going to quickly plop on the gloss texture. Okay, and then we can close out of a Blender. Okay, so yeah, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and update the door frame. So I'm going to use the double one. So you'll notice that it's just wider. We already have one door on there already, but we do need a second one. So I'm just going to copy that onto the door frame. So we have 2. And I'm going to go ahead and call that one door_R. So in terms of the original one, unfortunately we can't rename those in child blueprints, but we can rename any additional ones just to help distinguish which is which. So in terms of the door positioning, we do need to make sure that the pivots are set up essentially as a mirrored of this one. So what we need to do on this one, what we can do is just scale by -1 on the Y. That works for me because of the type of mesh. If your meshes are in a slightly different orientation, you might need to change that slightly. Okay, so that's fine. So if we then rotate it, okay, and then that should rotate fine as well. Yep. Okay, and then we need to go ahead and add the back plate onto there as well for the handle. And then I'm going to do copy the handle onto the back plate. And I'm just renaming these with _R on the end, just so I know that it's the right side. So at this point, it's just a case of positioning these. So one thing just to be aware of, because I have because I have scaled on a minus number for the door, anything that attaches to the door will also be scaled. As you can see down here, these have all been scaled as well. So it's just something to be aware of when you are doing something like that. Okay, so just want to move this over. Okay, so that looks about the right distance apart. Okay. Right, so at this particular point, we are getting somewhere. So that's the door set up. I'm going to go ahead and plop the double door into the level. And you'll probably see that when we actually go to test it, it only ever does it with the right side. And you'll probably notice nothing happens because we've not set anything else up. So if we come back to the swing double door, we can then go to the main event graph and we can start looking at setting up some of these things. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is the set outline state. And what I'm going to do is, so we've got the set custom render depth. I'm get that to show like so. Now, in terms of the doors, if we make sure that these are set to interact on the block on the interact. That's that door, got the main door there. I'm going to make sure the door handles aren't. And it's personal preference as to whether or not you want to do that. The reason why I am choosing to do this is because we are going to be interacting on a per component level. If the handles and the backplate is set to on that interact channel as well, we might need to set some additional logic up to handle when you're looking at that. So just for simplicity, I have disabled it on that, so the only thing that it should interact with, and on the door frame, so the only thing it should ever interact with is the actual doors themselves, so it'll sort of ignore like the accessories. So with this particular setup, so we'll just show, choosing the show on there and then the hit component. If we come over to here now, you should see that the outline actually changes when we look at something else. So if we look at the left side, you get the outline. Well, it's probably not the easiest to see. Let me change the lighting on here a little bit. Where's the directional light? And then just move the door into the shade. Okay, so hopefully that should be a bit easier to see. So if you look at the left side highlights, and if you look at the right side will highlight. So as you can see, we're sort of starting to get that differentiation between the individual components within the door. So before we can really do anything else, we do kind of like need to set up the actual rotations for the doors and the handles so we can do something with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the timelines from, well, I'm just going to copy this stuff from the swing door, just because in terms of the functionality it'll be sort of the same, and that should work for the left side already. So what I'm going to do on the actual functions, I'm just going to put _L on them, just so we know that's for the left side of the door. We need to make sure we do that for the set swing state as well, just because these doors will have their own state. Okay, so that's that. And then we can go ahead and essentially just copy these down. So this one's going to be the anim _handle _r, and then these ones will be the open and close door for the R as well. So anim open door, and that's going to be the anim close door. And then lastly it's the swing state. And then just making sure we update these like so, and then we need the R handle. Yeah, sometimes if you do get this little error there where it says it couldn't be found, just delete the variable altogether and then just drop it back in. That tends to sort it, I'm not sure why. Okay, so now we've got the actual timelines. So in terms of the door rotation, we may need to potentially change the rotation, but let's have a quick check. So is that 100? Yes, it's -100 on the yaw, and that's positive. Yep. So for the right door, for my particular example, I need to set that to -100. So it's kind of like the mirror, as it were. We'll quickly double check this as well. So that's 30 for the normal. So if we was to rotate the door handle down, that's going to be -30. So it's just updating that one. So these, as I mentioned, these are just the timelines to handle the animations for the doors opening and closing, and the handles rotating as well. So that's those done. Let's move those side by side a little bit. So that's those done. Now what we need to do is override the open door function. Well, we will need to actually. I'm going to come back to that one in a second. What I'm going to do instead is actually start dealing with the interact function, or the event, as it were. So first thing I'm going to do is get the allow interaction. I'm going to do a branch on that. So this is just checking to see if we can actually interact with this particular actor. And then we set allow interaction. Just as a reminder, this was done in the previous video with the bifold door, and this is just to stop you from interacting it whilst it's moving. And then we just need to set the interact instigator. Again, in terms of this particular sort of section, it's very similar to what we've already used in the previous tutorials, so I do apologise if I went through it quite quickly. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is deal with what we're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new function. I'm going to call this one update hit component. So when we first interact with the door, what we want to do is actually get what the actual component is that we're looking at from the interaction system, so we can store that locally within the blueprint. This is just so that if there is anything else that we need to do in here, we still have a reference to that actor. In most cases, it should always be, most things will get updated through the interaction system anyway, but there are some scenarios where we could deal with it directly for other things. So what we can do, we can get the interact instigator, and then we want to use the get component by class, and we want to go ahead and get that interaction base. Once we've done that, we want to go ahead and do an is valid on that. So we do a is valid. So essentially what we're doing is the interaction system is placed directly onto the character, which when we interact with something is normally passed through and set to the interaction instigator. So what we're then going to do is check to see if it has that interaction component we're looking for. If it does, that's great, because then what we can do is we can get the current hit component, and we can just set that to a variable. I'm just going to call that hit component. Now in this particular instance, because of when this function would get called, we would always be looking at a component, so we don't need to worry about the blocking hit section on there. Okay, and if we go back to the main event graph, we can go ahead and drop that in after the interaction instigator. The next thing we do want to do is similar to the previous tutorial again, so we want to clear the outlines of what we're looking at. So what we can do for the functions, we can just override the clear outline function. So in the parent, I believe it will already be clearing the door. So what we can do is then just clear the outline for the right side. So for this, we just want to do the set custom render depth, and we just want that to be false. So if you're ever not sure what's going to get called in the parent, if you double click on it, it will open it up. So as I mentioned, in the parent, it automatically clears the initial door. So for the double door, we just need to make sure the parent's called, and then we can clear the right side. So with that done, if we go back to the main event graph, we can then drop the clear outline in after the update component. Again, this is just so when we interact with the door, it clears the outline until we're able to interact with it again. The next thing we want to do is the enable hit recheck. And again, this is from the door base. And then lastly, update door state. Yeah, because that's not in here. So we're going to have to set that particular one up. So if we go ahead and create a new function, and this one's going to be called update door state. So the first thing we want to do is actually check which component we're looking at. So because there's only two doors we can interact with, it's fairly straightforward. We can get away with just using a branch. So if we come in and get the hit component, and we can do a check if that is equal to the door. So that's the original door. Like so. And then what we need to do is, if it is equal to the door, we want to do another check, so another branch. And we want to get if the door is open. So door open. Like so. If the door is open, we want to do the close door. And if the door is closed, we want to do the open door. Like so. And we will set up the insides of these functions shortly. The next thing we need to do is actually to handle when we're looking at the right side of the door. So obviously at the moment we don't do anything. What we actually want to do is create another variable. So with it being a double door, each side can have its own state. So we've got one already for the main door. So I'm going to create another variable. This is going to be door open underscore r. So we know it's the right side. I'm going to copy the branch and pull in that variable. So this way we're checking the state of the right side of the door. And in essence, we want to call exactly the same functions in this example. So we can just connect them up like that. Like so. So we'll start by sorting out the closed door one. So if we go to override and do the closed door, and what we want to do is, in essence, is checking the hit components again. So if we get the hit component, this time we just want to know which one it's looking at. So if we do the door R, for example, so do is equal, and then we do another branch on that. So if we are looking at the right side of the door, we know we need to call the close door R. If it's not that one, we want to call the anim close door L. Just like so. Okay, so we do need to do a similar thing for the open door. So you want to override that open door function, and we can go ahead and add in that check again where we're checking the hit component. So this is where we're checking if it's the right side. If it is, then we want to do the anim handle R. If it's not, we want to do the anim handle L. And once the handles are done, we're going to set a timer by event. So the first one's for the handles, and then this event timer will call the actual main door opening event after a short delay. So the top one, that's going to be the open door R. For the delay, I'm going to set that to 0.25. I'm just going to copy and paste that down for the left side and just update the function from the open door R to the open door L, like so. Now I believe that should be working. No. Okay. So let me have a quick check as to why that might be. Okay, yeah, so the reason why is because I've not put in the update door states at the very end. So if you go back to the main event graph, from the event interact to the very end after the enable hit recheck, you just want to call the update door state function. So we'd created it, but we'd not put it anywhere. So now if we try, you see the door handle opens, goes down. Okay, so that's not closing. Okay, we'll have a look at that in a second. Look at the left side. That does open and close. Okay. I think I might know why that might be actually. So yeah, so if we come to the open doors, well for the door, if you notice the variables at the beginning are they're both the same. We need to update the where it says door open on the right side to that new variable that we created. Like so. So now if we try it, so it opens and then it closes. It opens and then it closes. Like so. Now, one thing that we want to do as well, so you probably notice if we look at the prompt, it says open regardless of where we're looking. Now, ideally what we want is if we're looking at the right side, we want it to show close in this example and say open if we're looking at the left side. So that's sort of the next thing we're going to sort of look at, so we can get the text to reflect accordingly based on what we're actually looking at. So we come back to the main event graph again, so the swing double doors, and you get the get interact text. So there's a few things we can do in here to set up what the text should be that we're looking at. So the first thing I'm going to do is do the select. That's going to be, for the index, going to be a type of bool. And we want to get the allow interaction. The reason why is because if allow interaction is false, then we don't want it to display anything. So that'll make that interaction prompt disappear. If allow interaction is true, it's at that point that we want to start differentiating based on what we're looking at. So we'll do another select node. The index is going to be type bool. So you kind of think of, one's going to be the left side and one's going to be the right side. So we do need to distinguish whether or not we're looking at the left or the right side. So what we can do, if we get the door R, we can actually get the render custom depth. Get render custom depth pass. So when we're looking at something to interact with, we set this to true. And when we're not looking at something, it gets set to false. So we can actually use that value to help at this particular point distinguish what it is that we should be displaying. Because you've got to remember, until we actually interact with something, that hit component isn't set. So we don't, at this particular stage, we don't know what it should be. The only thing that we've done is set the outline. And the only thing that we've passed through here is essentially enabling the custom depth on a particular component. We could, if we wanted to, just store this variable instead, like the hit component. But that might not always be the best option with something like this. Generally, particularly the update hit components, we've got it set so it updates when you've interacted with it. But having it where it's updating in two different places, that can cause sort of confusion or conflicts in other sort of functionality. So in this particular example, because I can get away without doing it, I've opted for this particular option instead. But as with most things, there are usually lots of ways to do something. It's just a case of figuring out what's best for your particular project. Okay, so what we can do is go ahead and add another select node. So we'll actually need two, so I'll just copy and paste them twice. So one to the false and one to the true. So for the top one, I'm going to do door open. And then for the bottom one, I'm going to do the door open. I'm going to make sure it's the one for the right side. So for the top one, That's going to say open. If it's the bottom one, that's going to say close, and just rinse and repeat for the other side. And close. Like so. So we just save and compile. Okay, so now if we go ahead and test that. So the moment they both say open. Now if we look at the right side, it says close, but if we look at the left side, that says open. So now we're starting to sort of differentiate between the two different components that we're looking at within a single actor. Now, in terms of this particular blueprint, we are nearly finished. You might be glad to hear. There are a few little things we need to do just to wrap this up. So if we go back to the swing double doors, for the door open variable, I just want to go ahead and make that instance editable and expose on spawn. Now the reason why is so it shows up in this list here. So I'm going to also drop that particular variable in the door state category, and that should hopefully put it in the same one. It's spelled differently. There we go. So now we can see the two different door states that we have here. At the moment, these don't update in the editor, and if I set these to true and then interact, I'd have to actually interact twice to get it to do something, which obviously isn't ideal. So what we need to do is on the construction script, get it to use these particular values and update the states accordingly. So what we can do, if we go back to the swing double door, go to the event graph, and what we actually need to do is set the door rotation. So I'm just going to copy and paste these. So one for the left and the other. And then we need to use a select rotator. So this is where we choose the rotation. So we're going to select the door open R and put that to the corresponding rotator. So we need the other one, so door open, like so. And the normal door, so the left side, that should be 100, and then the right side will be minus 100. Like so. So as you can see, these are now starting to reflect what's happening. So the last thing that we do need to do on here, and that's just call those set swing state functions. So set swing state L and the set swing state R. And as a reminder, these are the events here that just update the timeline state, so it knows where in the timeline that it should be. So if it's open, it'll be at the end. If it's closed, it'll be at the beginning. So we can go ahead and use a select float on these, like so. And then we can copy these two variables and plug them in. So you just want to make sure the door open R is for the swing state R and the door open is for the swing state L. Now for the value, so A would be 1 on both of these, like so. Now if we was to start with one of them open, if we was to interact with it, it should then close accordingly. There we go. So yes, so that's how you would go about setting up a double door within Unreal 5, and how you would sort of build upon some of the blueprints and components that you've already set up. So hopefully you found this tutorial interesting and found it helpful. If you do use this, obviously by all means do let me know in the comments what you're using it for, and obviously let me know what you think. Have you found this helpful? If there's anything else you'd like to know how to do, particularly in regards to doors, because I seem to be going a bit of a door trend at the moment, please let me know. But yeah, just want to say thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye.